Shalom. So, I actually can't do the normal Bible study tonight because I am going to a holiday party. Not a Christmas party, not a Hanukkah party, a holiday party with some friends of mine who have been friends of mine for a very, very long time. And Max refused to do the thing. Happy holiday, Fraud. Long time no see. How you doing? Um, Jason is still in India, I believe. He was last seen in India. Um, not sure if Bill, who goes by Levi, will be dropping in or not. This is considerably earlier than I had scheduled the Bible study, and I did have a picture of Max on, which probably drove a lot of people away. I mean, we could do some sort of actual Bible study, but we don't do much Bible study on my Bible study, do we? I still have The Language of Creation by Mathieu Poigeot over there, which I haven't read. And I'm supposedly starting Star of Redemption by Franz Rosenzweig soon. I mean, it's supposedly the next book on my list. I've been reading this book I got at a Benedictine monastery. Jewish mystical autobiographies, something like that. It's a translation of Reb Chaim Vital's diary, and is it the Shloach HaRush's? One of the Hasidic masters' diary. I haven't got. I'm still in Reb Chaim Vital's, so haven't gotten far there. I should be writing a paper, but why would I do that when I could be wasting my time online? Did anybody actually watch my Hanukkah for Christians stream? I thought that was an interesting stream, personally. Let's see. How many people? Hanukkah for Christians. 122 views. Yeah, it is surprising anybody watches my channel. Oh, apparently there were comments on that too. From Father Stephen DeYoung. Most Christians have First Maccabees in their Bibles, so you're more dunking on evangelicals. Well, we always like to dunk on evangelicals. And we always like Father Stephen DeYoung to comment on my streams. Putting in my vote for actually reading the Hebrew Bible in Hebrew on the Hebrew Bible study stream. What parsha what parsha are we on? Is it Vayigash? Well, first, let's see. So, today was Miketz, and today, no, hold on. So today was Vayeshev. You can tell I didn't. No, today was Miketz, and I was right. Vayigash. Ooh, Friday is Asara B'Tevet. We should talk about Asara B'Tevet. Miketz was today. Vayigash is next week. Asara B'Tevet. So there are 7 fast days on the Jewish calendar. The only fast day that is considered biblical by Jewish standards is the fast of Yom Kippur, which is on the 10th of the month of Tishrei, the Day of Atonement. There is the fast of Esther, which is mentioned in the Bible, but we believe that it is Minhag Israel. It is a Jewish custom to fast on the fast of Esther. And there is the fast of the firstborn son, which is also a custom. So people who qualify as firstborn sons fast on the day before Passover. And then there are the 4 fasts for the destruction of the temple, which Zechariah 8:19. Let me pull up Zechariah 8:19. Zechariah 8:19. That. Are you guys actually seeing this? No, you're not actually seeing this. I should actually let you guys see it. V'yehi davar Hashem tzavakot alai lemor, and the word of the Lord of hosts came to me, saying, Ko amar Hashem tzavakot, tzom haravi'i, v'tzom hachamishi, v'tzom hashvi'i, v'tzom ha'asiri, yihyeh. Interestingly enough, it's in the singular. I would have expected the you will be in the plural, but it's in the singular. Lebeit Yehuda, to the house of Judah, lesason ulesimcha ulemoedim tovim v'ha'emet v'hashalom ehavu. They will be days. So these fasts, the fasts of the 4th, the 5th, the 7th, and the 10th month, will be times of great rejoicing. Therefore, love the truth and peace. And so the question becomes, what are these fasts? The fasts of the 4th, the 5th, the 7th, and the 10th. These are the 4 fasts that were instituted by the prophets after the destruction of the first temple, and they were reinstituted by the rabbis after the destruction of the second temple. And this is why some heretics who shall not be named will actually not fast on these fasts anymore because they're heretics. But so when you're referring to the months, right? The Jewish month, the Jewish year starts at Rosh Hashanah, which is on the first of the 7th month. The Jewish New Year starts on the first of the 7th month. Okay? So, the first month is Nisan. The 4th month is Tammuz. By the way, that's when my birthday is. And there is a fast on the 17th of Tammuz, which starts the 3 weeks, which is a time of mourning in the Jewish calendar. And interestingly enough, the 3 weeks has a lot to do with Mormon calendar as well. If you're Mormon, I highly. I just remembered that that guy is going to be showing up any day now in Los Angeles. That's the 4th month is the 17th of Tammuz. And then 3 weeks later is the fast of the 5th month, which is the 9th of Av. And that is the so Jewish fasts are from all drinking and eating. So no drinking or eating anything. And almost all of the fasts are daylight fasts, meaning they start at sunrise and they go until sunset. There are 2 fasts, the fast of Yom Kippur and the fast of the 9th of Av, which are 24-hour. They end up being closer to 26-hour fasts because they go from sunset to sunset. And so 9th of Av is really, I mean, it tends to be a pretty big deal in most Jewish communities, despite the fact that it is not a biblical holiday. So in Jewish circles, we would say it's not a biblical holiday, which makes Christians think that it's not mentioned in the Bible. And that's not what we mean when we say it's not a biblical holiday. It is, as you can see here, it mentioned in the Bible. And the fast of the 7th, which is the one pretty much everybody completely forgets about, because it's a week before Yom Kippur. And when you mention to most non-Orthodox Jews, non-religious Jews, that Orthodox Jews fast a week before Yom Kippur, they think you're making a joke. But there is a fast on the day after Rosh Hashanah, and people who aren't so religious generally forget about it because they have everything out, like 2 days of Yom Kippur, and then 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, and then Yom Kippur is coming up, and then Sukkot is coming up, and like you add the fast of the third day of Tzom Gedalia, the fast of Gedalia, and most people are like, "What are you even talking about?" But it does exist. That is the fast of the 7th. And the fast of the 10th is on the 10th of the 10th month, which is this Friday. It is Asara B'Tevet, and it's right after Hanukkah, obviously. And so these fast days I'm not sure if they were observed during the Second Temple period. I'm guessing that they were not. Let's see. What's Tisha B'Av observed during the Second Temple period? Let's see what Stack Exchange has to say. This is a matter of dispute between the Rishonim. Maimonides, in his commentary to the Mishnah, Rosh Hashanah 1:3, wrote that the people observed the fast of Tisha B'Av even during the period of the Second Temple. The Shut Tashbetz, Rabbi Shimon ben Tzemach Duran, wrote that they did not. Apparently, this is also the view of Tosfot, and as later explained by Rabbi Abraham of Minsk in Sde Tzofim. Interesting. Very interesting. But that is a question of the Rishonim, who are the rabbis from between the year 1000 and 1500, approximately. I don't know if there is historical evidence about this. I could certainly believe that there were people who that there may have been a controversy during the Second Temple period whether or not Tisha B'Av and the other 3 fasts for the temple were observed. So the question becomes, Saharia 8 has not been fulfilled. I wonder what the sources say about why they did or didn't. I mean, we can pull up Maimonides on. So Maimonides commentary on the Mishnah. So Mishnah, where was it? It was Rosh Hashanah 1:3. So the Mishnah is broken up into 6 orders. The first order is Zeraim, literally seeds. And the only, I believe the only Gemara, the only Talmud in Zeraim is on Brachot. Talmud of Bavli. Talmud Yerushalmi exists on the other ones. And then the second order is Moed, or holidays, and in that you find Rosh Hashanah, and they said 1:3. כשהיה בית המקדש קיים יוצאים אף על אייר מפני פסח קטן. So it says, so this is talking about the messengers that would be sent, because the month would be declared by the Sanhedrin in the temple, and they would send messengers to notify people of the months, and on months that it was particularly important to know when the beginning of the month was. And so it says on 6 months, messengers go out. On Nisan, that's the first month, because of Pesach. On Av, that's the 5th month, because of the fast, right? So that's the 9th of Av. On Elul, that's the 6th month, because of Rosh Hashanah, which is on the first day of the 7th month. On Tishrei, to correct for the festivals on Kislev, because obviously it would be Rosh Hashanah the moment that they sanctified the moon in Tishrei, but Yom Kippur and festivals, more than anything, would be talking about the Festival of Tabernacles on the 15th, and Shmini Atzeret, which is on the 8th day, which is a separate festival. On Kislev, because of Hanukkah, which is on the 25th. On Adar, because of Purim, which is on the 15th. And, the fast is on the 13th, I believe. And when the temple existed, they also went out on Iyar because of Little Pesach. So in the Bible, it mentions that someone who cannot bring the Passover during Passover, the next month in Iyar can bring a Passover offering, that is referred to as Pesach Katan or Little Pesach. Okay, so commentaries. Maimonides. Let's open up Maimonides. Okay. Eino Elo Yerushalayim. So he's explaining. I guess we could read that English, but Ube Beit Sheni, during the time of the Second Temple, Lo hayu mit'anin lo asara b'tevet v'lo b'shiva asar b'tamuz. So the 10th of Tevet and Shiva Asar b'Tammuz are 2 of the 4 fasts. Ela misha haya rotzeh mit'ane, misha lo haya rotzeh lo haya mit'ane. Whoever wanted to fast would, and whoever did not want to did not. Mipnei zeh lo hayu yotzin al Tevet v'al Tammuz. They wouldn't send people out on those 2 months. Amar Hashem Yitbarach, God said in Zechariah, Sum Haravi, like the one that we read, the Gomer, Nire Kemi Shenatan Beyadam HaBechira Ratzu Mit'anim, Ratzu Ein Mit'anim. It appears that God is giving us the choice, right? Because it says these fasts will be a time of festivities. So the question becomes, why? Because it depends on whether or not it is a time of festivities or not, whether or not you fast, right? Betum Haravi, hu Yud Zayin Betamuz, Ki Tammuz HaChodesh Haravi, like we explained. Betum HaChamishi, Tisha B'Av, Shechol B'Chodesh HaChamishi, like we explained. And even though it was their choice to fast or not on Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, Kamosh Zacharanu Hayu Mit'anim Bo Mipnei Tkifat Minei Ha'evel She'iru Bo Kamosh Yitbar B'Ta'anit. So the way he says that, as is explained later so one of the tractates is the Tractate of Fasts, right? So apparently in chapter 4, Mishnah 6, it talks about how many horrible things happened on the 9th of Av. So he said people still, during the Second Temple period, had a custom that everybody would fast. Jesus says to his disciples that certain demons only come out with prayer and fasting, which I think presumes that some kind of fasting practice was common for them. If not these fasts, then what? Also, moreover, when you fast, do not be like the hypocrites with a sad countenance and so on. So when you look at the Didache mentions that the Christians fast on, is it Tuesdays and Fridays? Or is it Wednesdays and Fridays? I mean, we could look up the Didache. The Eastern Orthodox still fast on those days. And they say not like the hypocrites. Because there has been an ancient Jewish tradition which the most pious people hold up, which is to fast on Mondays and Thursdays, because those are the days on which we read the Torah. So the Torah is read on Monday, Thursday, and Saturday at least, in addition to holidays. And it is our custom to say additional supplications and confessions on Mondays and Thursdays because of that. Many people will fast Monday, Thursday, Monday after Passover and Sukkot. Those are referred to as Bahab. The Kabbalists have a tradition to fast on Shovavim, which is the 6 weeks starting with Shemot when we read Exodus. So Shovavim would be starting. When does Shovavim start? Shovavim would start on the 6th of January. And so many, Kabbalists will fast Mondays and Thursdays for those 6 weeks. There's also the fast referred to as Yom Kippur Katan, which is the fast the day before Rosh Chodesh, which is the first of the month. You should not fast on days when we do not say Tachanun, which are days which we don't say additional confessions and supplicatory prayers. That includes generally on the Sabbath. Fasting on the Sabbath is frowned upon. But, people do, different people fast at different rates. But the Friday fast, at least, is in honor of the crucifixion. That's clearly not what Jesus is talking about. Yeah, fasting, just in general, obviously fasting's a good thing if you can do it. Hasidism was very critical of people who fasted too much and the possibility of fasting too much. If you're fasting and one practice I actually like is Tanit Dibur, which is a fast of words, which is on those days that you are doing it's basically a silent, it's a fast of silence, so that some people try not to speak at all other than obviously prayers and stuff like that, or at least not to say anything beyond any necessary words during those days. And I actually found it to be a very interesting and enlightening experience. But yeah. A lot of people watch on Twitter. I did not realize how many people watch this channel on Twitter. So now apparently StreamYard is letting us know how many people watch on Twitter. Okay. Per Didache, Monday, Wednesday are Christian, Monday, Thursday are Jewish. I think you mean Wednesday, Friday. Monday, Thursday. I think the Didache, I don't know. We fast, people who fast extra fast on Mondays and Thursdays. So that's that. I guess we could look at Vayigash if you guys want to look at Vayigash. Vayigash, that's when Judah goes up to Joseph and is like, "Hey, Joseph, you didn't think of Dad very much now, did you?" And Joseph's like, "Well, neither did you, now did you?" Did I leave a link? I did leave a link if anybody wants to jump on. Let's take a look at Vayigash. So, Vayigash is in still Genesis, right? Vayigash. And you will see that each parsha is split into 7 aliyahs. So that's what it is here. So first aliyah goes to a Kohen, second aliyah goes to a Levi, the third and beyond go to Israel, and the 7th one is Maftir. It's the last one. And the person who gets the 7th aliyah reads the Haftarah, which is the section of the prophets which is read after the Torah reading. And that's when Jesus was reading from Isaiah. It is very common to invite guests to be given aliyahs, especially maftir. Although maftir is also oftentimes reserved either for the rabbi or people of who are very Andrew, Jonah 2. What's the vow he's supposed to fulfill? I don't know. What vow are you talking about? Jonah. Where's Jonah? Jonah is not. I didn't think Jonah is Jonah. There it is. It's in the prophets. Why did I think it was in the writings? Jonah 2. Which verse are you talking about? I don't know. Oh, Asher Neder Shalama Yeshuata. He is quoting from Psalms. So the language he's using is from Psalms. So Nedarai Ashalem. Shalom. Psalm. Psalm 116, 14, and 18. He's obviously quoting from Psalm 116, which is part of Hallel. So I'm not sure I would think of it that the language is just obviously parallel to Hallel. Man was straight told to go to Nineveh. He didn't. I think he's just he's just quoting from the thing. Why is maftir sometimes a repeat of part of the previous reading? Okay, so there are the 7 readings, and then somebody gets called up, and then Kaddish is said, and somebody is called up for maftir. If there is a holiday or some specific Haftarah reading, then, for example, let's say it's a new moon or whatever, or it's Shabbat Chol HaMoed, right? Then there's a specific reading. If there isn't a specific reading, then the last part of the reading for that week is repeated. And we can't just leave that off, because if there is a special reading or a reason for a haftarah, for a maftir, special maftir, then you wouldn't finish the parsha. So you finish the parsha, and then you call somebody up for maftir with the haftarah, and you read a little bit of Torah, if it's a special maftir, one of the special maftirs. And if it's not, you just read the last part of the parsha that you were reading. I hope that's clear. Didache is probably referring to local Jewish practice, I guess. Hello, KL. I have no idea who you are, but welcome. We are only going to go a little bit longer. Because I am actually going to. I would prefer if David curtailed his involvement in online participation. I think he has a very unfortunate propensity to overestimate his own intellectual capacities, and talking to him long enough, you should recognize that he has challenges. Why is Max the thumbnail clickbait? Well, since I'm on mute, and your parents would lose their mind if they found out you were listening to me. they, I have an idea. What would happen if your parents are actually listening to me and you're listening in the other room? That's hilarious. David has intellectual difficulties, developmental difficulties. And I am very, very critical of people who do know or should know that and still parade him on social media in front of people. So that's all I'm going to say. What were we talking about? We were talking about Max, because that party that I was supposed to go to last week got shifted to this week. So I'm still going to go to the party. So, and Max couldn't, I was hoping Max could take over Bible study this week, but he can't. And so I just did. Fraud says, we were so close to Vayigash. Okay, let's go take a look at Vayigash. We were very close to Vayigash. So Genesis, Vayigash. Vayigash alav Yehuda vayomer bi Adoni yedaber na avdecha davar beoznei Adoni ve'al yichar apecha be'avdecha ki chamocha kaparo. And so he's using a circumlocution in Hebrew, which is a way of being humble, which is when you speak of yourself in the third person. So speaking of yourself in the third person in Judaism is considered an act of, in the Hebrew language, is considered an act of humility. Adoni sha'al et avadav lemor hayesh lachem av o ach. He asked, do you have a brother? So Rashi says Vayigash approached is a language of confrontation. And he says that when he asked this question, Judah actually knew that it was Joseph. And he's confronting him and saying, hey, don't you care about our father? Or, Venomer el Adoni, yesh lanu av zaken, vayeled zekunim katan achiv met vayivater hu levado leimo ve'aviv ahevo. And his father loves him. V'tomer al avadecha horiduhu elai ve'asima eini alav. And it's very curious that it says, I shall put my eye. It's singular. It's not plural. Eini alav. V'nomer el Adoni, lo yuchal hanar la'azov et aviv ve'azav et aviv v'amet. His father would die. V'tomer el avadecha, im lo yered achichem hakaton itchem, with you, lo tosifun lirot panai, you shall see me no longer. V'yi ki alinu al el abdecha avi v'naged lo et divrei Adoni. It's actually kind of curious to me that when they're speaking in Egypt to Pharaoh's viceroy, they still refer to going up out of Egypt. And you would think that the Egyptians would not consider their country down, but that's how it is in all places. In the Hebrew Bible, you always, from anywhere you go up to Israel, And from anywhere you go down to Egypt. Egypt is always down, and Israel is always up, and Jerusalem is always up. Vayomer Avinu shuvu shibru lanu ma'at ochel. So he sent them back. Venomar lo nuchal laredet im yesh achinu hakaton itanu veyaradnu ki lo nuchal lirot penei ha'ish va'achinu hakaton einenu itanu. Veyomer avdecha avi, my father, your servant. Elenu atem yadatem ki shnayim yalda li ishti v'yetzeh ha'echad me'iti. One of them escaped from me. Veyomer ach, and I said, Va'omar ach tarof toraf velo re'iti ad re'iti ad henna. So you see the doubling language. It gets translated as surely. Tarof toraf, right? He torn, he was torn, right? That's what it literally is. It gets translated as sure. Ulekachtem gam et zeh, you will take this me'im panai vekarahu ason, and some horrible thing might happen to him. V'horadetem et sevati v'ra'a she'ola, and you will. So seva is gray hair. I believe it is related to seva with an ayin, meaning to be fulfilled, but that is debatable. But yeah, Bara'at She'ola, some people would say towards the grave. That hay is the directional hay at the end. And yes, She'ol does appear in Genesis. And the likes of Bart Ehrman would say that it only means graves. V'ata kevo'i el abdecha, avi v'hanar einenu itanu v'nafsho keshura v'nafsho, and his soul is bound up in his soul. V'haya kiroto ki ein hanar v'met v'horidu avadecha et sevat avdecha vinu keyagon beyagon, she'ola. Ki abdecha arav et hanaar me'im avi. For thy servant became surety. Oh, so he's saying, here, take me in his stead. Arav, this is, collateral. La'amor im lo avinu elecha v'chatati la'avi kol hayamim. I have sinned against my father all of my days. Va'ata yeshev na avdecha tachat hana'ar eved la'adoni v'hana'ar ya'al im echav. So he wants to be put in his stead. Ki eich ele el avi v'hanar eineno iti, ki er'eh bara'a asher yimtza et avi. V'lo yachol Yosef leitapek, he could not withstand it. This is in the reflexive. L'chol hanitzavim alav, all who was standing before him. Ve'yikra hotziu chol ish me'alai, everyone should leave. V'lo amad ish ito, and nobody was with him. Behitvada Yosef el achav, when Yosef made himself known to his brothers. And honestly, hitvada is one of the best arguments for a two-letter root in Hebrew, in my opinion. But there you go. Vayiten et kolo bivchi, and he gave a voice, his voice to crying. V'yishma'u Mitzrayim v'yishma Beit Paro, and Egypt heard, and the house of Pharaoh heard. V'yomer Yosef el Echav, Ani Yosef ha'od Avichai. And this is one of the most famous lines in the Hebrew Bible that has become a song. Od Avinu Chai, Od Avinu Chai, Od Avinu, Od Avinu, Od Avinu Chai. Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael Chai. Od Avinu, Od Avinu, Od Avinu Chai. Right? So he says, is our father still alive? Ha'od Avi Chai. V'lo yachlu achav la'anot oto ki nivhalu mipanav, because they were terrified. Okay, yeah. Vayomer Yosef el achav geshu na elai, come close to me. Vayigashu vayomer ani Yosef achechem asher mechartem oti mitzrayma va'ata lo al ta'atzvu va'al yechar be'enechem ki mechartem oti henna ki lemichya shlachani Elokim lifnecha. Because what you thought for evil, God planned for good. Ki zeh shnatayim harav, for these 2 years of famine. Bekerev haaretz va'od 5 shanim asher ein charish avakatzir. Yeah, this is actually another famous line. I mean, this whole story is incredibly famous in Judaism, and so the words used in it are used in a lot. They're used in common parlance. V'yishlachayni Elokim lifnechem lasum lachem she'erit ba'aretz lachem lifleta gedola va'ata lo atem shalachtem oti. It is not you who sent me here. Ki ha'elokim ve'yasimenu la'av laparo la'adon l'chol beito u'moshel b'chol eretz Mitzrayim. Right? It's not whatever you could try to do whatever you want, but ultimately it is the will of God which is actually done. Maharu va'alu el avi v'amartem alav ko amar bencha Yosef samani elokim la'adon l'chol Mitzrayim reda elai, come down to me, al ta'amod, do not wait. V'yeshavtem be'eretz Goshen v'hita karov elai ata uvanecha uvnei vanecha v'tzoncha uvakarcha v'chol asher lach v'chilkalti et otcha sham ki od 5 shanim ra'av pen tivaresh ata uveitcha v'chol asher lach v'hine einechem l'ro'ot ve'einei achi Binyamin ki pi hamedaber alechem. Vehigadtem la'avi et kol kevodi b'Mitzrayim ve'et kol asher reitem u'mihartem ve'horedtem et avi henna ve'yipol al tzavarei Binyamin achiv va'yevk, and he cried. Binyamin bacha al tzavarav, and Benjamin cried on him. V'nashek l'chol echav v'yevk alehem. V'acharechen dibru echav ito v'hakol nishma beit paro le'amor ba'u achei Yosef v'yitav v'einei paro v'einei abadav v'yomer paro El Yosef Emor El Achecha זאת עשו תענו את בעירכם ולכו בואו ארצה חנן. תענו את בעירכם. אוקיי. וקחו את אביכם ואת בתיכם ובואו אליו ואתנה לכם את טוב ארץ מצרים ואכלו את חלב הארץ. You shall eat the fat of the land. ואתה צווית זאת, עשו קחו לכם מארץ מצרים עגלות לטפכם ולנשיכם ונשאתם את אביכם ובאתם ואינכם אל תחוס על כליכם כי טוב כל הארץ מצרים לכם הוא ויעשו כן בני ישראל ויתן להם יוסף עגלות al pi paro. I believe there are historians who point out that wagons were something that were uniquely Egyptian 3,000 years ago, and the story seems to be aware that wagons were a thing that were uniquely Egyptian. V'yiten lahem tzeda ladarech, provisions. I mean, tzeda literally means things that were hunted. Lechulam, but I guess it could also be fish. Lechulam natan laish chalifot smalot uvelimyamin natan shlosh meot kesef v'chamesh chalifot smalot. ולאביו שלח כזאת 10 חמורים נושאים מטוב מצרים ו10 אתונות נושאים bar. So bar here is they're translating it as corn. So bar in Aramaic is sun. In Hebrew it can be purity, or which includes clean, like winnowed oats and grains. And I'm pointing that out because Christians translate Psalm 2 as kiss the sun lest he be mad. Whereas I think the more reasonable translation, although there are apparently Jewish translations which also see it as kiss the son, as in Israel being God's son, obviously not Jesus, although I mean you could argue that Jesus was part of Israel, but that's beside the point. The general translation, which I think it makes much more sense, is bar there refers to purity. Nashku bar, I would translate as arm yourself with purity, but Christians translate it as kiss the sun. V'lechem u'mazon v'aviv l'darech v'yishlach et echav v'yalachu v'yomer alehem al tirgezu b'derech. Don't get mad on your way. That's an interesting way of saying. Ve'yalu mimitzrayim ve'yavo es Canaan el Yaakov avichem ve'yagidu lo le'emor od Yosef Chai. And Od Yosef Chai is the name of several synagogues, many books. Od Yosef Chai. Joseph yet lives. Ve'chihu moshel b'chol ha'aretz Mitzrayim ve'yafag Fog libo ki lo ha'amin lahem. That is not a word I am familiar with. To be feeble, pug. Okay. V'daber alav et kol divrei Yosef asher diber alehem v'yar et ha'agalot אשר שלח יוסף לשאת אותו ותחי רוח יעקב אביכם. His soul lived, or was revived, yeah. ויאמר ישראל, רב עוד יוסף בני חי, אלך ואראנה בטרם אמות, before I die. What do you guys think? Do you speak Hebrew fluently? Nope. I certainly do not speak modern Hebrew fluently. My biblical Hebrew isn't horrible, but I learned Hebrew in college. Am I boring people to death? What's a lower place, a pit in the land of Israel or a throne in Egypt? A throne in Egypt. Why are you even asking? It's funny that Israel, I mean, the Dead Sea is literally the lowest place in the world, I believe. And in Hebrew, you would still go up to the Dead Sea from Egypt or anywhere else, really, which is interesting. ויסע ישראל וכל אשר לו ויבוא בארה Shava. And in case you were wondering if Be'er Shava was known as 7 wells, yeah, it obviously was, because here in Genesis, they refer to towards the 7 wells, and it's towards the wells that there's 7 of. So it was considered a descriptor back then, apparently. ויזבח זבחים לאלוקי אביו יצחק. ויאמר אלוהים לישראל במראות הלילה. God came into him in a dream. ויאמר יעקב יעקב. Jacob Jacob. ויאמר הנני. And he said, here I am. ויאמר אנוכי הקל אלוקי אביך. אל תירא מרדה מצרימה. כי לגוי גדול אשימך שם. Anochi ered imcha. I will go down with you. And this is another big deal in Jewish theology, that God comes down with us into our exile. Va'anochi alcha gam alo v'Yosef yashit yado al einecha. Veyakom Yaakov miBeersheva ויסעו בני ישראל את יעקב אביהם ואת טפם ואת נשיהם בעגלות אשר שלח פרעה לשאתו איתו, ויקחו את מקניהם ואת רכושם אשר ירכשו בארץ כנען, ויבואו מצרימה יעקב וכל זרעו איתו. All of his children were with him. בניו ובני בניו, איתו בנותיו ובנות בניו, וכל זרעו הביא איתו מצרימה. He brought all of them with him. ואלה שמות בני ישראל הבאים מצרימה, יעקב ובניו, בכור יעקב ראובן. So there are 70 names given here, and we believe, so there is a discussion, especially even with the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, about a particular verse in Deuteronomy, which says, in the Masoretic text, it says that God apportioned the nations according to the children of Israel, whereas Christians will often say, and the Dead Sea Scrolls agree with them, and the Septuagint says that it says apportioned the nations according to the angels. But we believe here the 70 refers to the 70. This is the 70 according to the nations. And so here is a table of 70 names. I'm not going to read all of them because I hate reading names and tables of names. Yeah. So it says, Kol hanefesh haba'a leYaakov Mitzrayma yotzei Yericho milvad neshe bnei Yaakov Kol nefesh shishim v'shesh ובני יוסף אשר יולד לו במצרים, נפש שניים, כל הנפש לבית יעקב הבאה מצרימה 70, right? So it's 66 plus Yosef, his two sons, and Yaakov makes 70. Got it? Okay. Well, as long as fraud is not being bored, that's what's matter. That's what counts. Okay, people, I think I am going to leave you. Unless anybody had anything in particular they wanted to talk about.
Martianism.
I got someone asking, I wonder who that might be, asking about Marcionism.
Anti-Semitic, is it?
Is Marcionism anti-Semitic? So, if you watched my long introduction on anti-Semitism, you would know that I say the proof of anti-Semitism is animus towards Jews, right? Like, what are we trying to say when we say somebody is anti-Semitic? It means that they have a prejudice, they have a judgment they have made about Jews, which they then are trying to, which we are saying is being manifested in whatever is anti-Semitic, right? So, if someone has a genuine problem with a particular person, right? That's not necessarily anti-Semitic, although it could be, right? So if you are you don't like George Soros. I don't like George Soros. Now, why don't you like George Soros? Now, if you lost a lot of money when George Soros cornered the silver market, I think it was, right? And you don't like George Soros because of that, or you see the funding that he's doing for various political things and you don't like that, that's not anti-Semitic necessarily. But if we see that really your dislike for this particular person, right, you're focusing on him particularly because of your anti-Semitism, right? You're revealing an animus when we see that what you're saying doesn't make sense, right? So is anti-Zionism anti-Semitic? Sometimes it is. If you are criticizing Israel because, right, I keep on pointing out, right, if you generally care about war and you're a general pacifist and you were as equally worked up about all the people who were being killed in Yemen and Syria as you are in Gaza, that's not anti-Semitic, because you're just being worked up over the fact that people are dying. And if you're generally someone who gets worked up over people dying, that's the reason why you're doing it. But obviously we see, and frankly, it was crazy reading Glenn Greenwald today, talking about unprecedented what was going on in Gaza, and it's like, really unprecedented. Like, are you even paying attention to the rest of the world? Like, all of these people who are losing their minds, right? Why is Gaza suddenly different? It's because it's the Jews, right? Like, these aren't people who lost their mind when Assad was bombing cities in Syria, or when Mohammed bin Salman, the king of or prince of Saudi Arabia, was bombing hospitals, Houthi hospitals in Yemen, right? Do you know the name of any hospitals in Yemen? Do you suddenly know names of hospitals in Gaza? Like, why? What's different here? So the problem with Marcionism is that it's such a poorly formed theology that you don't find people who genuinely have Marcionite awoken the bear. You don't generally find someone who comes to Marcionism from from developing a theology. It's their hatred of the Jews, which makes them hate the Old Testament and hate the Old Testament God. And you can tell that because they don't have a coherent and well-formed theology.
Oh, okay. She had to say the same thing about the Noahides then.
What do you mean?
Poke a Noahide and find someone who's angry at Christians.
Oh, a Noahide who has a prejudice against Christianity, has an animus towards Christianity. Yeah, that happens a lot. There are plenty of people who are Noahides because they're mad at their own family, and it has nothing to do with being a Noahide.
But my point is, I don't think that makes it so that they're Noahidic theology, therefore I need to disturb it just because they have some disagreements that they need to work out with it.
Is it possible?
I can explain why I think that Marcionism at least has.
No, hold on. No. The term Marcionism has a particular history. There's a reason we talk about Marcionism. Right? Because it comes from being a Christian who believes that a Jew, like, came and died for your sins, a Jew who says salvation is from the Jews, right? And then you come from a Christian background and you turn on the Bible of the Jews and the Bible of Jesus. Like, it's such bad theology.
Do you think Islam is coherent? Like, okay, let's do some rankings. Do you think Marcionism is more coherent or Islam?
Islam's definitely more coherent. There are very few Marcionites in the world.
So let me explain. Islam is a form of Marcionism. I think that's easy to explain. You're saying a God tricked everyone into thinking that Jesus was crucified on the cross, but it didn't happen. So we're saying that we have a deceiver God, and then we have a new revelation. So we deceived you beforehand, it was all everything like that. And I'm fine with all the deceiving. Now I'm coming again to give a new revelation that is correcting all the previous revelations.
Okay.
How is it not Marcion?
You are no. Okay, so you are using Marcionism in a very different way than everybody else does.
Right.
You're redefining Marcionism.
I'm being a little liberal because again, it was one guy who wrote.
What
one
you are
thing.
describing is Gnosticism, not Marcionism. And Gnosticism is actually a very, very bad term. Like a lot of these terms, like when you communicate, you have to do it with nuance.
Okay.
Like, okay, I mean, what particular situations are we talking about? But Marcionism, when people bring up Marcionism, they talk about Christians who reject the Old Testament as not part of their Bible. That's what they mean by Marcionism. And it's a heresy, according to the vast majority of Christians, because it is so badly incoherent with the rest of Christianity.
So we just did a bit of a give and take. I think that Marcionism and Gnosticism are very similar.
They are.
And I would say that at the very least, from what I understand,
Gnosticism tends to also be anti-Semitic, I have to say.
right. So from what I understand, Marcion, who wrote a book basically saying this is what Jesus spoke about, this is what the Old Testament God spoke about, here's how they're different, and here how they're incompatible. Therefore, Jesus must be a different God than the God of the Old Testament.
I'm not some sort of expert on Marcion. I have difficulty believing anybody is a very big expert on Marcion because generally people all agree he was just bad at his theology.
So
there's nobody who goes around and says, I'm a Marcionist. There are zero people out there who are like, I read Marcion and I'm like, yes, this guy is a smart guy. I mean, it's like Destiny. People watch him because he's silly and stupid.
You can also say that there was only about 500 Unitarians throughout history. And everything. Are we saying
there's been lots of Unitarians? What are you talking about? The United States was
yes, I saw that clip. Yes. Yeah. Are we saying before 1700 there was an innumerable amount of Unitarians?
What do you mean? I'm not even sure what you're saying.
All I'm saying is I think that hold up. I'm trying to think. Okay, I got it. To have a set of beliefs, you need to have a time that those beliefs are going to be viable, right?
Okay.
So, for example, the reason you talked about, liberalism and everything like that, the reason Unitarians were able to grow is because they had an environment to grow, right?
Okay.
Even if you discovered Unitarian was true in the 10th century, you'd probably just become an atheist, right? You didn't see it as a viable option. And I would say that if you are a Marcionite, you're probably just going to become an atheist. You look, most atheists are Marcionites. I would definitely say if you ask an atheist, what are the problems with the Bible? Old Testament goes first. Richard Dawkins is pointing at all these things.
Right, and did you see the exchange between Richard Dawkins and Lord Sachs, Rabbi Lord Sachs?
No, I didn't. Oh yeah, no, I saw it. Yeah,
yeah.
He tried to make any points, and he basically said, "What about this slavery and everything like that?" Yeah.
And Rabbi Sachs's reply was, "You're just giving us an anti-Semitic Marcionite."
And his reply, I don't think it's anti-Semitic.
But it is.
But you just said there, so that proves my point. If Rabbi Sachs is able to describe that as Marcionite, even though he doesn't believe in God, then we're able to use this term. So this term that you said before, I'm using too thinly. Now we've expanded.
Okay, no. Okay, so if you want to use Marcionite, and there are contexts in which I have used the term Marcionite to refer to people who are steeped in Christian anti-Semitism, not Christian theology, steeped in Christian cultural anti-Semitism, right? So let's distinguish between actual, intelligent, believing, theologically orthodox Christians and Christian culture, right? So you have people who were living your average peasant 500 years ago in Christian lands who didn't know, like, was illiterate, didn't know, average, person living somewhere.
Yeah.
Right. And there was a culture of anti-Semitism available and prevalent in those areas that had a lot more to do with the fact that lots of people were ignorant and didn't have much education and da 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 da.
Yeah.
Right? So there is a culture of anti-Semitic
If
we're
he's
gonna
I
leave-
want
we're
to
gonna leave
finish
soon.
Marcinus.
Okay,
I want to like
leave
actually.
soon. Sorry, Kurt.
Yeah.
Well, I will generally bring you up. We're gonna wrap this up, and then I have to leave. So we're winding down the stream. Sorry about that, Kurt.
Yeah.
There is a Christian cultural anti-Semitism,
Yes.
which is sometimes described as Marcionism.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, then you're just using Marcionism as a way of identifying a flavor of anti-Semitism. You're not actually talking about a theology at all.
So I'll be more. Here's what I want Marcionism to mean. And
Okay.
Here's what I think it means.
I'm just wondering why you want Marcionism to mean anything.
Because I look like, hey, as I think about it more, I'm like, it's kind of like
Because you want to be a
it's
Marcionist.
convincing. Like it's way more convincing. It's like having my cake and eating it too.
So
Like that's why like when I look at people like blogging theology,
Trey wants to be an anti-Semite. He just hasn't been able to figure out how to achieve this goal of his. He's
like for example, when I look at like blogging theology,
laser pointers and cats, by the way. Lots of fun. This is a laser pointer. That's a cat. Yes, you were saying blogging theology.
right? What he's able to do with his theology is he's basically able to say like any problems I have with the Old Testament or even the New Testament, I'm able to sweep under the rug, pretty much. Like for example, if like I've watched what was it like the Muslim skeptics say like, well, there's evidence to say that Yahweh came from Asherah, or Asherah and them were wives and everything. You'd be like, oh yeah, that's fine, because those are errors in their time and was probably revealed, right? So it's interesting to see like the flexibility of it at the very least, and I think I feel like a lot of
Most
people.
incoherent blobs of thought are very flexible and easy to fall into. Yes.
So I also noticed that most Christians to have a good theology have to have some form of Marcionism. Like, and by Marcionism, what I mean by that is that I think that you are highlighting one form of scripture as either more imbued by God's knowledge, more imbued by this, and then another part of scripture as less imbued, less involved, more separated, more misguided, and everything like that. And now you maybe say I'm stretching Marcionism, but I think that's part of it, because you're saying that when Marcion is comparing these two things, he's saying, I really like this part of scripture, and it is very good to me. This part of scripture does not work. So
Okay.
I'm going to create a theology on top of that.
Okay. So, I mean, first of all, what I like about Father Stephen is that he has been attempting to create a theology. He's been explaining Christianity in a way that doesn't dismiss the Old Testament. And I think many Christians end up having to do that. And I think that makes Christianity incoherent and silly.
So, for example, Jonathan Peugeot, if you look up his video on Old Testament violence, he basically says, well, you see, we just always have to look at the fulfillment of Christ. We have to look at the end. We have to look at the fulfillment of Christ. It's like, hold up. Like, And I started thinking about that word. What you're saying is Christ is better than the Old Testament God. Like you're saying that the fulfillment of everything that's going on in the Old Testament. If you're saying it's all about the fulfillment, you're saying that everything in these scriptures isn't as important in these scriptures. And then I'm watching Trent Horm's clip on about Old Testament violence as well, and he says it's a legitimate position that a Christian can hold by saying that the killing of one of the Amalekites, whatever, the Canaanites, right, was just a reflection of their time and everything like that. And it was merely just their own vices being put onto scripture.
He was saying that's a preferable belief to atheism. He wasn't saying it was something he agreed with,
right?
Or he was proposing.
But he said that like you could still call yourself a Christian and have that view. And that like
no, hold on. He's trying to convince people to call themselves Christian.
Right, but I would say that like that's you're basically
no. You're confusing two very different standards.
Oh, okay, we'll talk. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Because he's an apologist trying to get people to want to be considered a Christian, and he's trying to find ways that those people feel comfortable saying they're a Christian. He's not actually defining a theology.
Right, but okay. So let's say I'm like, hey, I got this really cool idea for you. You can call yourself a Christian, but all that Old Testament stuff, like that's just merely an idea of their time. Okay, God was allowing them to be influenced by all their vibes. Okay, just focus on the New Testament. As long as you believe in Jesus, I don't care about all the.
This is what Christianity's been saying for thousands of years.
How is it like? As my definition of Marcionism is saying that you're putting one light of Scripture.
Okay,
up
so
here, and then one down.
Okay,
here.
so
like that doesn't.
Okay, I
see
that. No, I mean this is the problem.
Yes.
Is when you actually try to turn that into a coherent theology, it ends up eating itself up.
Okay, so I'm gonna give you the same scenario. Let's say a Jew came up to you, or as the man who was like, "Well, I was raised Jewish, but I don't want to call myself Jewish unless I reject all the books that Moses wrote, and I."
That's the discussion I've been having with Rabbi Mullet.
No. But I take all the other books. I don't like this Moses guy. He doesn't really front my. And you're like, okay, fine. As long as you're like 80% there, that's fine. You can say they're all rejecting the tradition.
Trey, you're getting involved. You're confusing very different things. This conversation is.
We're gone.
Yeah.
It's Marcionism rules. That's all I gotta say.
Good night, everybody. Have fun.
Happy